and welcome to the Frugal Crafter podcast. I'm Lindsay Weirich, and this week we're talking to Justine Hovey, who runs the very successful YouTube channel and card making business. Justine, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Oh, me too. I've been following your channel for years, and I love how down to earth you are and how approachable you are in card making and crafting. I also love your use what you have mindset, but it was your recent video titled Is Card Making Dead that made me really want to have you on the show. Can you give us an idea or an overview about what that video was about?
Yeah, so I've been kind of seeing these little things happening in the industry, little signs of trouble, I guess you could say, companies closing, people doing no spends, all sorts of things like that. And I wanted to just dive into the idea if is card making really declining in popularity? Is just buying card making supplies declining? What's going on just based on what I've been hearing from my followers and my audience. So
Oh, so you had a lot of comments on that. Why do you think crafters resonated so much with that?
I think that there are very few card making YouTubers out there that discuss things like this. A lot of the times it's just tutorials and this is how you make things. And, you get some product reviews now and again, but mostly tending towards the positives because they've, all gotten the products for free. And, friends with the companies. I mean, it's a very close knit industry. We all know each other, and so we never really, yeah, we don't like to say bad things. We'd rather just not post. And all those types of things. So I think that people really love honesty and they like to get a like behind the scenes look into things. And, a lot of people like to understand how everything works, why how our products made, why are products so expensive, all those different things. And I think a lot of people resonated too because they feel like maybe they're buying less, they're crafting less, that kind of thing, and maybe sought a reason why.
Hmm. I went through the comments on that, just reading through because it's so nice to see, it's just really interesting to see how people outside of the industry perceive what people are doing online. I don't make cards that often these days, but still, it's interesting to kind of see what people have to say. Were there any sentiments that really stood out to you in your comments of that video?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely the most popular thing that resonated with most people, and that was the economy in general. I mean, being unable to purchase craft supplies on a regular basis or as often maybe as they used to in the past because, money's tight at the moment, groceries are more expensive, gas is more expensive, everyone's kind of feeling it. And I think it's kind of the
Hmm.
first thing that we stop investing in at that point or buying are the things that we don't really necessarily need. I know I need craft supplies, but
Oh, yes,
and
definitely a necessity.
yeah, oh, for sure. And, I think that's where people kind of start. And then, yeah, I found that to be the most popular comment where people saying they just don't have the money anymore. Another thing that seemed to be really popular too is that they were just overwhelmed by the amount of supplies that they personally had, the amount of supplies being released, felt like they couldn't keep up anymore. And those I think were the two things that I found the most interesting and the most popular among the comments.
Yeah, I think those are both two really big reasons that the stamp companies were having a hard time right now. And if you think of when scrapbooking was really big in the late 90s and early 2000s, as it was starting to wane, then we had the huge financial crisis and people were losing their jobs and any discretionary income just went away. Plus, everyone had so much stuff that had purchased over all those years, and they're like, "Well, I got to use what I have." And then I don't know if I know before I got into scrapbooking because I didn't start until my son was born, and that was back in 2002. I kind of envied scrapbookers because there were so many scrapbooking stores, and there's so much a community. You could go to a crop, you go to a class, there was stuff going on. And I think when the stores started to close, and there weren't the classes going on, and there weren't new things showing up on the shelves, that also makes it wane. And then there's kind of like a self-fulfilling prophecy there when you see a hobby kind of crest and then decline a bit.
Yeah,
But
definitely.
I
And
also,
I think,
Yeah.
that like going to a class and actually, knowing you're going to create something and knowing it's probably going to turn out okay, I think it gives people so much security in like, okay, I'm going to go do this. I'm going to go buy all the supplies, but I'm also going to use them at the same time, right? And you have that
Hmm.
accountability of being an in-person class that you're going to do it when you're there. You're not just going to walk out halfway through, right?
Hmm.
And that's kind of different between online events and then YouTube videos and things like that is you have to motivate yourself, right, to
Hmm.
create with the things that you're buying.
Oh, absolutely. There was this place called Nancy's Scrapbooking. I used to love to go once a week. It was kind of like I'm getting out of the house, and I would buy the paper and the embellishments that I was going to use for a layout right there because the crop was free. So I wanted to make sure I was supporting the store, and that
Mhm.
brought in people every Wednesday night. And once they stopped doing the crops, it wasn't very long until the business closed because they weren't getting that steady stream of people that were, they were coming in and then I don't want to say they were feeling obligated to buy, but they wanted to buy because they wanted to keep the store open because that's where they were going to do the thing without having that reason. People had a hard time making time for it in their own homes on their own. You need that kind of it's kind of the accountability I guess we can get online when we share our stuff on Instagram or Facebook. But
Mhm.
we got it in real life. It's like page I just made, like, and we do an awe over everybody's stuff, and it's a good feeling, and it's that the whole sense of community that I feel like we lost when a lot of the scrapbooking stores closed.
Yeah, and then in its own way, it kind of boomed in a sense through things like Facebook groups and virtual events, where all of a sudden these things are accessible to people who maybe never had a store in their area,
Mhm.
or are unable to travel or are homebound or things like that. And I think it's got its pros and cons. I mean, I loved the in person
Mhm.
events myself. We had a place called DAT's Scrapbooking. It was in this gigantic bright blue house, and it was so cool, and it was so fun to go there and just find other like-minded people. And
Mhm.
I also miss that aspect of having the brick and mortar store in the area.
Yeah. Yeah, and I can't imagine how a brick and mortar store would do today, keeping up with carrying all the variety of products because some things are so specific. I know I have friends that nowadays, I don't know about the stores because you're in Germany, correct?
I
Yeah,
am.
how what they have for a variety of stores there, but here we have the big box stores because there's very few small stores, and they'll only bring in one or two brands, and they'll have the same stamps there for years and years and years. And now
Yeah.
there's nothing. They don't have anything there. And it was kind of like I feel like they kind of didn't do themselves any favors by not freshening things up. But on the other hand, I can also see they can't offer every option because
Yeah.
it's such a
Mhm.
niche. There's so many niche products out there that wouldn't appeal to the general population.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So when I was living in Scotland, we had a little shop right down the road from me. It was like fate, where I ended up getting my apartment. And, it was just like a
Oh,
5 minute walk.
nice.
And they ended up
Oh,
closing up as well and moving to online. But it was the same kind of thing. You kind of went in there, every week, and I was expecting to see something new or a new release, and that wasn't
mhm,
necessarily the case, right? I think it's
right.
impossible to really keep up unless you have like major investors because there's so many products out there now, and this just the
Hmm.
space you would need. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I noticed in your comments a lot of the blame being put on the stamp industry for these frequent product releases. Do you think the frequent releases are hurting these companies?
I don't think it's I think it might be hurting from a select few individuals that have that opinion. But on the other hand, I don't see how a stamp company would survive, in all honesty, without having frequent releases. Because I'm friends with several, company owners, and they all say when they release a product, it's good for about a week. And then after that,
Hmm.
the sales start to trickle. And a month later, they aren't selling any of those things anymore, because there's no inspiration being put out there anymore, and people already want the next thing. And
Hmm.
so I don't see how companies would survive. I mean, before they used to have the big one catalogs, like Stampin' Up! And Close to My Heart, they had their annual catalogs with maybe a little pamphlet that would come out mid-year to kind of keep up some interest. But I think that with the way our consumer habits these days, we get bored of
Hmm.
that and we want more and more variety and all those things. And I just see so many overhead costs that you just need to keep going. It's kind of like a bit of a hamster
Hmm.
wheel. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Because I was thinking every time I see that comment, I think, well, it's not that any one company is bombarding you with all of these products. It is 30 companies that are all coming out with monthly releases because there's only so many stampers, and you're only selling to this certain pool of people that you have to keep coming up with the new things, because if you're not selling things and you're not having the income to pay your people and to put put products out the door. And I know, as being on the side of designing products, I heard the same thing from companies I worked with, where like, yeah, we're not going to re-release it because it doesn't usually it'll just sit in the inventory. It'll sit in the warehouse if we release a product. So we want to order about what we think will sell
Mhm.
and hit it hard, and then on to the next thing. And it's uh yeah, it is quite a hamster wheel, I think.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I also, yeah, know from designing products and things that it's just, yeah, that once it sells out, kind of sells out, and they're grateful that it does sell out, and then that's it. I mean, it doesn't get restocked. Yeah, there's no point in it really at all. So, yeah, I think
Hmm.
that, yeah, our buying habits are interesting. And I think our buying habits influence these, how often releases happen as well. And
Hmm.
sure, some companies do release more than others in the sense of, okay, they might have a kit plus releases, or they might have different kinds of kits and things like that. But I think what's really important as a consumer, as a crafter, a hobbyist even, is to realize that it's not all meant for you to buy, all 30
Hmm.
companies releases. What do you like? What do you enjoy? And you're not going to buy from every single company every single month. Only certain ones are
Hmm.
going to appeal to your style. Just because they're coming out with things doesn't mean you have to buy it, right?
Oh, yes, absolutely. I
Mhm.
think there's also that kind of social media thing where you see everybody else's highlight reel, and you just scroll through Instagram, and it seems like everybody has this stamp set. Everybody's using this, and you feel like you're like the only loser that doesn't have that product. So you better buy it, or oh, they're sold out. Well, then next time I'm going to get it as soon as it comes out, and it just, it feeds that frenzy. But if you gathered a random group of 20 stampers in a room, I think you'd be very surprised to see what the average stamper has. It's not the
Mhm.
rooms full of bins of stamps like you see online. It would be probably mostly stuff bought at craft stores, a few things ordered online that were kind of special that really resonated with them, but it wouldn't be what you see on Instagram all the time that we're comparing ourselves to, or thinking we ought to have, or feeling bad
Mhm.
that we don't have because we feel like, well, everybody else can afford this. Why can't I? Everybody else has all this stuff. And that, I think, that also fuels a little bit of the resentment that some customers in
Yeah.
the stamping industry are having.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, even know for myself, I started when I was a student. So I was in uni, and it was, I'd see these people post their hauls, and I'd see someone get, the entire Lawn Fawn release, and I'd sit there and think that's $700 in product. Like,
Mhm.
am I supposed to be doing this? Am I supposed to be getting all the coordinating dies? Am I supposed to be getting all the stamps? You kind of feel like that you're trying to keep up with the Joneses a little bit.
Mhm.
And yeah, in reality, it's not like that at all. I mean, I like to tell people all of my stamps, dies, hot foil plates fit in one IKEA Raskog cart. And,
That's awesome.
I'm good. I have already too many choices there. So.
Yeah, one thing that I've been telling myself, and if I could offer this a piece of advice to anybody that's a stamper or thinking about getting in the hobby, is buying what you like and not what is trendy. Because the thing with trends is, like, the more you see something, even if it's something you would never be interested in, the more you see it, the more you like it. Just kind of like with clothing, could be clothes that you're like, the first time you see it, like, oh, that's gross, and then by the 20th time you've seen it, you got yourself a pair of skinny jeans and something you would never would have bought yourself, whatever it is, but you get used to it. So it becomes familiar and you like it. And then 5 years from now, you're like, ugh, I'm so sick of that trend. Why did I even get into that? It's because you never liked it to begin
Yeah.
with. And you've probably seen the trends come and go over the years. Like, cupcakes will be big, and then owls will be big, and then like 5 years later, cupcakes are big again and owls are big again. And one thing that helps me not buy things that I like, because I'll see something like, oh, I like that, but it's like, okay, that's going to take the place of something I already have. So is this
Mhm.
cupcake better than the 20 cupcakes? Well, maybe not that many, but the five cupcakes in my stash. Because if I buy this cupcake, that means those other ones are not going to get used as often. And so if I compare it with what I already have and say, is this better? Would I trade what I have for this?
Mhm.
Then that helps me really, really decide whether it's something that's going to add value to my stash, or just going to be a replacement for something I already have that I don't really need a replacement for.
Definitely, definitely. And one thing that was really interesting in the comments of the video was were people saying that it seems like, you know, the stamps that are coming out, they're all the same. Like one company releases unicorns and then the next one does and the next one does. And I have to say, like the amount, at least the amount of time I have to plan my releases in advance, it is pure coincidence most of the time, I swear.
Oh, funniest thing, I was working on a stamp design for Craft Stash, who you designed for as well, and I was thinking, oh, it'd be so cool to have like a big postage collage because I love to make little inchies and postoids and stuff like that. And then it was like a couple days later after I pitched that, I saw waffle flowers, and I'm like, scrap that idea, scrap that idea. Mine is not as good as that. That just people should buy that one.
Yeah,
So it
and
was so
sometimes
funny.
it's
There
too
must have
late.
been,
You got to go through with
yeah,
it.
and there must have been something in the air because then like the ton stamps came out with something like that. I mean, there were several different like postage stamp sheets coming out at the same time. And it's like, and it seems like, well, they're copying each other. How uncanny. It would be very difficult for the amount of lead time that they need for anything to get copied like that.
Yeah, if it
You
happens like a
know,
year or
so
two later, then sure. But yeah,
yeah, yeah, exactly. But I bet there's probably something, somebody's doing something in a video, and then it sparks an idea like, oh, yeah, I remember when we all used to make our faux postage. Wouldn't it be cool to have a die and a stencil for that? You know, it probably, and a couple
yeah,
other people started percolating in a bunch of percolating in a bunch of brains, and then you see the same things come out from different companies. That's got to be so frustrating for for those companies that are releasing the same stuff.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. But it happens.
Another common, yeah. Another comment I saw on your video was people saying that they were frustrated that uh, all the all the influencers do a project using the same supplies, and then the next week they're all done. Nobody's using them again. So by the time the person has ordered their supplies and gotten them in, nobody's using the product anymore. And what struck me as strange is like, why don't you just go back and look at all those projects that were already released with it, because they're there, the videos don't go away, they're
Hmm.
not, they don't expire. So uh how do you respond to, I don't know if you get those comments or not, how would you respond to somebody that was criticizing that once they bought the product nobody's using it anymore?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like the whole idea of the products. When they release, they're no longer interesting after a week. And it's almost like that for, you know, I mean, a lot of the influencers are either on design teams or they get products from a company and then they use them. But then the next one comes and you got to create with that one. And there's just no time to go back.
Mhm.
And I understand people's frustrations, but like you said, why not just go back to the old content? I actually ended up setting up a little thing for myself on Airtable where it was, you know, when I buy something, I automatically input it into my little inventory. And then I will also link the videos that I saw it in, or I'll at least save the picture of the project. So I know, okay, this is what I wanted to make with it, so that I'm not getting into that habit of buying something and then, oh, what did I want to make with this again? But I actually make the conscious effort to, okay, this is where I saw it. This is why I bought it. This is what I want to make with it. I think that's really helped me stop kind of thinking that way that, oh, I want to see more projects with that. Um, yeah, and if you do have 20 people that are using the same product, in my opinion, that's awesome because then you're going to have 20 different ideas on what to use with that product. I don't think any crafter is going to post 20 YouTube tutorials using the same stamp set and the same die set. So you get a whole massive variety in the projects, and then probably more than you'll ever get from just one single person.
Mhm. I remember the Paper Crafts magazine. That was probably
Hmm.
my favorite card making magazine. And I would like tear out an idea. If I liked an idea, I would tear it out. And if I bought the stamps, I would just fold it up and stick it in the binder sleeve that had
Perfect.
that
Yeah.
stamp set.
Hmm.
And I think because that was so tangible, and we when we bought the magazine and then we would look over it a few times, we wouldn't just chuck it. Whereas the videos and posts online are just consumed so rapidly, and we forget what we see before the next thing comes out, that it's not like we're printing out Instagram posts when we see a beautiful card. We might click the save button, but do we ever go back and look at our saved
Yeah,
um,
rarely. Hmm.
posts and stuff? So what you said about Airtable is really interesting because I'm not familiar with that. Is that an app or a program or a
More or less
software?
just a easier user-friendly version of Excel, and it's free.
Uh-huh.
So it's just on your web browser, and it's just like a table. So you can set it up really for anything. So I use it for my craft inventory. So I know I'm not buying multiple stamps, and I also know, which sentiments I have and things like that. And yeah, so I love Airtable. I'm a big fan of it. Yeah,
Is that
on YouTube,
available?
I have some videos on it as well. So yeah.
Oh, excellent. I'll if you can send me a link to how to use that, that would be great because I want to know, and I'm sure people watching this video would like to know. Do you know if it's available for PCs and Macs or?
Both, and it's got apps and everything. So yeah, you could use it on desktop or on your phone, and yeah,
Oh, wow. Wow,
great
that
little
sounds great.
great little tool. Yeah. Hmm.
Oh, wonderful. Do you think that there are fewer people in the card making hobby now than we had, say, 5 or 10 years ago?
It's really hard to say because for me, the fact that I have 100,000 people that have hit a subscribe button on my YouTube channel is mind-boggling to me that there's 100,000 people on this planet that like card making. And not to say that everyone who subscribes is a card maker, or maybe they just enjoyed something that I had posted, but how many card makers are there in the world is not a number that you can count. So it's hard to
Hmm.
really say whether or not things are on the decline. Um, I think that I don't know, my opinion, I don't think there's less card makers out there. I think it's just that people are maybe posting less or less involved
Hmm.
in more like the Facebook groups and things like that. And it could be also the reason if you're just a hobbyist type thing, like, oh, I don't maybe want to post my card because it's maybe not photographed as nicely. Maybe I feel it's not up to par with what you're seeing on Instagram and social media. So why would I bother with that? I always say, like, when I first started doing this, my posts were awful. My photography was terrible. I thought it was great at the time. Like, I thought I
Uh-huh.
was just, this is wonderful. And I go back, I'm like, oh my God, there's a lamp. I see a lamp in my video. And that was my lighting, like my mom's kitchen table, lamp. Terrible. Um, and I really appreciate the time that when I started, you were allowed to be awful at it, and then you just got better and you got to learn and improve. And now I feel like the people that come out, who are new, just fantastic photography skills, and just seems like they know everything already. Like, this is insane. They come
Well,
out with such
phones have
skills, and
gotten really
so
good.
intimidating.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And it can be so intimidating, I think, for the average like hobbyist to really want to post about what they are creating. And so I don't know. I like to think in my head that there's more people card making, but it's hard to say.
It is. It's hard to say because also people's like trends change. I know I used to go to a rubber stamp convention in Massachusetts every year, and every year the attendance got older and got fewer. So it did seem like there weren't as many newer people or younger people getting into the hobby.
Mhm.
And I didn't know if it's because they're all just online shopping and doing online community stuff or what, but I was hearing it from different vendors because you get to know the vendors and stuff. Um, and then I did some design team work for some of the vendors and they're very candid when when it's quiet and they're, speaking frankly. Uh, and a lot of the in-person shows have closed.
Mhm.
Um, so have you gotten any sort of information like that or felt that sort of wave from any of the companies that you work with?
Um, Not so much. I'm not sure how many companies online that are aware of the demographics of their audience, just because
Hmm.
everybody is online. And I don't get to go to too many stamp shows, but I do know from Creative World in Frankfurt, where I attend usually every year, that it seems to be quieter for sure, for people going into the in person events and stores. Um, and then you see companies like the Ton, for example, who started online and are, seem to be attending all of the shows, based, almost every
Yeah.
weekend at a different show. Where I'm saying, oh, interesting. Is there something there? And I think there's a different there's certain companies that kind of do the in-person events, and there's the online stores, and I don't think there's a whole lot that do both. And
Mhm.
so it's an interesting that there's kind of two worlds, and I'm curious, maybe that's, some of the card makers are the similar, where they're, going to the events and they want to go to the events, or and there's some that only want to do online, and there's few that do both.
I know in the in-person events, I find way more of the weird stuff, like the really strange rubber stamps, like in red rubber versus clear, and
Yeah.
um, it's a it's a really cool vibe. I need to get back. I haven't been in a couple of years, but I definitely need to go back because I just that's where you find those things. Like if you don't buy it now, you are never going to see this weird steampunk seahorse again. You know, it's just such bizarre things. Uh, but yeah, I hope that some of them can hang on because I think it's a really fun aspect or really fun side of this hobby.
Hmm. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I hope so too, and I hope more come to Europe. 'Cause
Oh yeah, for sure.
that would be nice.
Um, I I noticed like so you go to Creative World, there's the big trade show they have in America, well now it's Creativation, but there used to be two. They used to run two trade shows per year in America from the CHA company,
Hmm.
and then that shrunk to one, and now it's a co show with the American like North American Art Materials Association. So it's a trade show with the art materials and the craft materials together.
Hmm.
Um, but I almost think that where it's because before it seemed like there was so much fervor over the trade shows that people would watch just to see what's new, and by the time something actually came out on the to buy, people were over it. You know, they'd already seen so many videos about it online. So I think that might actually be we might actually be kind of going back to this sense of having a little bit of mystery about what's coming out every month. So you're not like, I saw that in the CHA preview 6 months ago. I'm over it. You know,
Hmm.
I don't know. I think having those little surprises here and there, as long as people don't get overwhelmed by them, are nice little things to
Yeah.
look forward to.
Definitely. And with before with not having the social media, you didn't really get to see too much of things. You might have heard about things, but you really had to wait for
Yeah.
the store owner in your area to get the products to demo them for you, right? I mean, I
Hmm.
attended a several of the creativations, and I think I attended the first one that was after Anaheim, and that was where everybody had said it got small, and then it kind of got. I went 3 times, I think, and it got smaller each time. And I haven't been since just because it's a overseas flight now for me.
Hmm.
Um, but it was always great to connect, see what's coming out, and yeah, and it's different because it's not just for the average consumer and hobbyist, right? It's more for stores and to buy.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Something that I noticed, because I've never been to the trade show, but I would watch the videos because I was very nosy. One thing I noticed, like especially after the 2008 recession, was the consolidation in like the crafting and scrapbooking world, where like American Crafts bought up so many of the smaller companies, so that you don't have the variety of manufacturers there. But in the stamp world, it seems like there has been since that time, there's been a lot of small companies that have kind of sprung from the earth and are creating that variety of products. So it makes me wonder because it seems like these trends and cycles repeat. I kind of wonder, is there going to be some big stamp company that comes in and like tries to consolidate, or if the
Mhm.
smaller companies are going to stay independent on their own, or do you have any insight towards that at all?
Well, I mean, Spellbinders has bought a few, like they did the Fun Stampers Journey, and I think Stampendous has a lot. Like, I'm not
Oh,
sure if they
that's
own Stampendous or
yeah, they bought
Stampendous
yeah, they
purchased
did.
them. So they've bought up a few and seem to be getting bigger. I do find there is like there's two kind of types of companies. There's the companies that kind of stay mom and pop shops or just have a really like either just one person running them or a very small team. And then there's the ones that grow and grow and grow and kind of really branch out into different things, like Altenew, for example, or Spellbinders and things like that. And it's interesting to see the growth and I mean, just because a company gets larger, it doesn't mean that there's more profit involved. It usually just means you're hiring more people, right? I mean, at the end of the day, I
Mhm.
mean, you get bigger, but there's different costs in getting bigger as well. So yeah, I think I don't know if anybody has like a massive monopoly over the stamping and card making industry, and I really hope that they stay with all the independent shops because that's where you get the creativity and the really different variety of things. I find.
Yeah, it is nice that you can truly find something that is your style. Even if it's not what's trendy online, you can find a company that's selling either really cool um, vintage Victorian stuff, or you're looking for really modern graphic stuff, or you're looking for kids stuff, or you're looking for more mature stuff. There's something for everyone, and I hope people seek those things out because it's always sad when you find out about a really great company just as they're closing their doors.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And I think that's happened to a few times this year, just the few companies that have closed where people are saying, oh, I forgot about that company or I never heard of this
Yeah,
company. And yeah, it's too bad.
yeah. I just saw this week, Crate and Craft TV. I don't know if you've ever heard of that company. They closed their doors for good, and that was kind of for people that don't know what this company is. It's a UK based company that is like a kind of like a home shopping channel or a QVC where they will bring on different companies and they'll demo their products and then people can call in and order or go onto their website and order. And I guess the companies ship out their products themselves, and a lot of companies are out of pocket for the materials because they were never paid by the
No,
crate and
no.
craft company, and they had to, yeah, they were sending out stuff in good faith, and that's really sad on an industry that's not a huge gangbuster. I mean, it's a profitable industry, but it's not like people think that these companies are making money hand over fist when they look at these. I guess we should talk about the elephant in the room, the companies that are counterfeiting, and they
Hmm.
see, well, how come I can buy this stamp set on Temu? It's the same thing, but it's $2 versus the
Yeah,
16.99 that it is on Simon Says Stamp or whatever website you like to shop on. Well, they're just getting it made over there, so why don't I just cut out the middleman?
yeah,
And I don't think there's the profit to be made that these people think there is,
yeah.
because I mean, you know, the overhead head costs of
Mhm.
making stamps and whatnot.
Definitely. I mean, that's something maybe we can just briefly touch on too. I mean, like the I worked with So Susie Stamps when I first started doing kind of the online presence thing, and her and I worked really closely together, and so I got to know. And this was nearly 20 years ago probably, and I know just to create, she did red rubber, and just to create the mold to pour the rubber in, it was $200, and that at the time, and then that was, I'm not sure if that was what size that was, if it was like a 6x8 size or what it was at the time, but it was like, how many stamp sets you have to sell in profit just to make back that $200 to make the mold, and you haven't even paid for the red rubber yet, you haven't paid for the packaging, the shipping to get it to you, the designing, the if they don't design themselves, the commercial licenses for it,
Mhm,
someone to ship the orders for you, the postage, there's just so many things that go into it. If they have a brick and mortar or they do it out of their house, I mean, you need places to store these things. It
mhm,
is a lot, and the counterfeit companies don't have to deal with that because they just steal the marketing off the website, they steal the videos off YouTube, they there's so much technology now with AI that you can remove watermarks so easily and just steal the design, and then all they have to do is manufacture it, and they got the machines already. So um,
mhm.
I always just, as much as I of course love to buy craft supplies and I don't have an unlimited budget, but I will not support companies like that. I mean, it's a principle thing, and I don't need just more and more to, yeah, profit off the backs of people who actually do the work. And it's really sad to
Yeah,
see the counterfeit. And at least, a few years ago, you could say that the quality just wasn't there. It was awful. The images were stretched. There were spelling mistakes. It was just very clear that these were counterfeit, and they're getting better and better, unfortunately. Um,
hmm,
they're not good quality still, I find, a lot of the products, but it's getting better, and it's just sad. It's really sad to see, and really just, I question personally, how can you possibly create something like that and send it across the world for like $2? I mean,
yeah. It's wild, and I know a lot of people will justify their purchasing. Well, all these companies have their stuff made in China anyway, but I know a lot of the photopolymer stamps and the rubber stamps are made right in the United States.
yeah.
Like because they're made with like the photopolymer is made with a like they have a transparency with the artwork printed on it, so they can make as many or as few as they want to without having the setup cost of like the rubber matrix board that they use. And that polymer gel is much more expensive than the silicone that the knockoff companies use. And
Mhm.
the ironic thing is that they use the photopolymer, it gives you a better impression, and they use it so you're not beholden to making more stamps than you can sell, and you can easily do reruns if you need to. But
Yeah.
like so if they're making them out of silicone, they're probably selling 5 times or 10 times what the real companies are selling them for, because I think you have to make a mold for silicone to do the silicone stamps.
So,
You
yeah.
can't just,
Mhm.
yeah. And I heard there was an issue with companies getting the rubber to make the rubber stamps with because of some sanctions
Yep.
in I don't know, was it Russia or Israel or something? There's some sanctions on some of the raw materials that they need to
Hmm.
get them. So
Yeah, some are
it's
switching
added
them
insult.
to clear, and yeah. Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's interesting, the whole thing, and like you said, so many are under the impression that these companies are just rich and making so much money because they're selling them at this price. But these companies aren't Walmart and Amazon. I mean, they're not ordering 2 million of one item so that they get it at such a reduced cost. I mean,
Mhm.
yeah, it's. I don't think there's a whole lot of profit margin on a lot of these
No, I
things.
think it's a labor of love for sure. And the companies that are doing the silicone stamps are generally the really big companies. They'll be like, that are like the Michaels that are commissioning a certain stamp set because they know they can sell it and they're going to put it in 2,000 stores. So, they can have the silicone ones made and it saves them money and they can sell it for cheaper. But not the average, not the average company. Do you
Mhm.
know about how many like units of a stamp design the average company sells? I bet it's not that much.
I don't I don't think it's all that much. I know like roughly for mine number wise, like it's usually somewhere between 200 and 300, but that's really
Mhm.
difficult to get done. I mean, so just kind of throwing that number out there. But
Yeah. Yeah,
it's,
same here. I was thinking it's probably about that.
mhm, I would think it's somewhere around that. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah,
depending on
really.
the
And
size.
when you think about that, that's kind of cool. It's like if you buy a stamp set, I think it's kind of cool that like you are only one of like 200 people that have this or one of 300 people that have it. I think that's kind of a cool thought too.
Sure. Kind of like art
Uh
prints.
even though yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's kind of neat like an art print. So how do you think we could get more people to get into stamping? Not necessarily get in and spend more money if they, aren't looking to do that, but how do you think that we can get more people into the hobby and the people that are already in the hobby to make more cards?
I think that, it really is about seeing it and not necessarily seeing it online. I think it's, how many of us started off because we ended up getting invited somehow to a Stampin' Up! Party. I hear that
Uh-huh.
time and time again from my followers. So I think that, like, for me, I know that there's not a whole lot of people my age. And now that I'm getting older, it's getting a little more common that people are into crafting. But when I was like 16, they're like, Justine, we're going to the bar. Like, what are you talking about? You're sitting home and scrapbooking. Um, um, I think it's just about introducing it to people too. I had like a couple girlfriends come over last spring and I said, this is my box of cards. Instead of just sitting here and drinking some coffee, why don't you guys pick one and we'll make it? And we had so much fun. And it was so much fun to introduce people to what I do and, invite a friend over and see if they like it and just teach them how to make a card. And everybody needs a birthday card or a sympathy card or something, to have on hand. And, yeah, I think it's just important to do it, and not just even just friends, but the next generation too. Get your kids involved. Yeah, my son's already like twirling
Absolutely.
the die cutting thing, the machine.
Ah, aw.
He's gonna teach a
Yeah,
card.
I agree. And it's such a fun way to spend an afternoon to get together with friends and craft and share your supplies. So if people don't have anything yet, they can see what they like before they actually buy anything, which
Yeah.
I think can be scary when you're like, I was telling a girlfriend of mine about, I was into scrapbooking, like, oh yeah, and then I use this and that. And so my husband said to her husband, oh yeah, you want to get involved in a product, in a craft or a hobby that makes you fill up your house with all sorts of stuff and spend a lot of money. you know, he was joking, but still, it was like, oh yeah, that's not
I
that's how it can go sometimes, but it doesn't have to. I think I got more done when I had one tote with all my supplies fit in one tote than when I have a room of stuff. So,
Definitely. I remember the first time I moved overseas, I sold all my stuff pretty much. And then I had one Alex drawer, like one of those little square drawers. And that's all I had. And when I had my ink pads, I had all my stamp sets fit in one drawer, my couple tools that I had. And there were no choices to make. It was so easy. I fell in love with it. And
yeah,
I still keep a very small space, I think, for the amount of content that I produce. But it's just, it's easier, I find.
Yeah, you don't get the decision fatigue of having so many options.
And even this, like the simple tip, I had hosted a challenge in May, and I just, said, if you're going to use an embossing folder, just grab like one fistful out of your stash and then pick from that instead of going through all 200 of them that you might have. Just grab like five and be like, I'm going to use one of these. Which one's it going to be? Just so it's easier. Because, yeah,
Oh, great idea.
yeah.
Well, I have one more question for you. How can we as crafters make this hobby sustainable for our budget and the planet and keep the companies we love in business?
Oh, that's such a hard one. I mean, I have to say, crafting is not a sustainable hobby at this point in time as far as our planet is concerned. I tried with Craft Stash too, like with my line, to have paper packaging. But then they had said, just the dyes fall out. So we need to put them in some sort of plastic, like Ziploc bag in the paper, so that they don't fall out, type thing. I think there's little things that we can do as far as the planet goes, and that shopping in person is one of them in a certain way, in that so you're not getting everything just delivered to your door from 50 different companies, especially the counterfeit ones that have to travel such a long distance. Um, you know, yeah, the planet thing, I would love stamp companies to really put their minds together for that. And I think that is a really cool idea. And my husband and I have talked about it. Like, is there a possibility of creating some sort of stamp company that is environmentally friendly? And is it wanted, um,
Hmm.
by the generation that crafts right now? We've had this discussion several times, and I don't know. I always hit a wall as to try and figure out how to not use plastic so much. So, if anybody wants a good business idea, by all means, start up a company. But sustainable for our budget, I think that for me personally, I find your style as quickly as possible. That's what I say. Like with, because once you find your style and you realize what you enjoy creating with, then the rest of it just becomes noise that you don't bother with anymore. And when I first started,
Hmm.
I bought critters and I bought flowers and I bought sprays and paints and this and that, and then I realized I was scared of paints. And, um, and the I just bought and went crazy. So I always tell, if someone's starting and they ask advice, I always say invest in one technique and learn the heck out of it. Like do everything you can possibly do with it and learn it well, and then move on to the next one. Because
Hmm.
a lot of hobbies, at least for me, like I can't even tell you how many hobbies I've started and then I don't continue with them. It's insane. And at that point, you can see like, okay, if I've done so many things with this, then I'll go on with the next one. And then you can see, is it something really for you, the hobby in general? And then, not just go out and buy 700 different things. Never forget the first Tim Holtz class I took, and I was a student, and I went and spent $450 on supplies right after because I needed to have everything. So tempting. And how do
Yeah.
we keep the companies we love in business? Buy the things you feel like you're going to use.
Mhm.
There's no reason, I don't think, to go on a no buy unless you really have like budget issues or financial issues. I think it's just more the, okay, what am I going to actually use, and buy the things that you really truly love, and you can support the businesses and you don't have to support them every single month, but you know, yeah,
Mhm.
spread the word about
Yeah,
it. You can share, you can, like, you don't even have to shop with them. Share a post, share a card that you like, recommend it to a friend, forward a newsletter to a friend that might like it. There's so many things you can do even to support a company for free.
for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think sustainability, like stamps and dies, they are things you buy. They're a tool you buy that you could use thousands of times
Mhm.
before like a die would go dull or a stamp would just stop holding ink. I've got some stamps that are over 20 years old that are on wood blocks and I still grab them off the shelf every once in a while. So they're I think in and of themselves, the products are pretty sustainable when you're looking at like stamps and dies and some of the tools that we use, and paper if it's stored properly. But I think that it's got to be balanced with the overconsumption habits of now. I mean, I know I get way too many supplies. It's so tempting. You see a beautiful paper pad, and it's like, well, it's just, $10. It's just like one paper pad, what's the harm? And then you get it back home and you're like, oh, this is the harm. I've got so much. But Yeah, I think swapping, if you could swap with friends, or if you do buy one of those paper pads that have like three designs of or three copies of every design, if you can split it with three friends and get more people into the hobby that way. And
Hmm.
you made a great point about buying what you supporting the companies that make the supplies that you really love and buying what you're going to use. But don't beat yourself up about it if you make a mistake and you're like, oh, I thought I'd really like this, but actually don't keep it just because you spent money on it.
Hmm.
Somebody will use that and it'll be just a thing for somebody. I make regular donations to especially with crafting supplies, to my local thrift store, because people will love to come across that. If you're on a budget and you come across a big bin of craft supplies, that's awesome. And
Yeah.
things that are a little bit more generic, I'll donate, or if I have a lot of a certain item, I'll give it to my local school or scouting group or something like that, that they
Hmm.
can use it. Then I think that helps keep it sustainable. Um, but yeah, definitely something to think about when we buy it. I'll think, would I pay full price for this? Or if I and I'll think about stuff that, like, do I already have something that I could use for this? Like if I when I KonMari'd, I think I saw you doing a KonMari video of your crafts thing. I love that. And I did the KonMari method on my stuff, and I worked for a couple ribbon companies about 10 years ago, and I was so burnt out on ribbon, and I had so much ribbon, and I pulled it all, I had it everywhere, and I just pulled it out into a big heap, and I had so much. And I kept like taking stuff out. I'm like, I'm gonna whittle it down. And then I still had quite a bit of a heap of it. And I was like, is there anything else I could use? If I didn't have this ribbon right here, what could I use? And I'm like, I could use washi tape. I could use a strip of cardstock. I could use a torn piece of fabric that's left over from a project. There's three things right there. And I found it so much easier to pass along those ribbons to people that would actually sew something with it or use it for something,
Yeah.
rather than letting it rot in my studio because I was so burnt out on that
Yeah.
particular product. So
Definitely.
yeah, look in your thrift stores if you're looking to craft on a budget. Oftentimes you'll see stamp sets and just huge bin like bags of supplies that are going for next to nothing because
Mhm.
no the people marking it at the thrift store don't see the value in it. Or
Definitely.
even post in your if you have a local buy nothing group, you could always post like looking for craft supplies, or if you have craft supplies, that's a great place to sustainably like get rid of stuff. If you have a bunch of art and craft supplies you're not using, to post in your town's community page saying like, anybody want this, I'm going to put it at the end of my driveway,
Yeah.
or DM me if you'd like me to put this out for you,
Hmm.
and or leave it at the library where somebody can pick it up, something like that, so it doesn't go to waste and somebody that's in need of it or just can put it to use. They don't even have to be technically in need, as if they couldn't like go and buy it themselves, but it will get it used rather than creating more landfill space. A few
Yeah.
ideas off the top of my head anyway.
Yeah, I mean, in Germany here, like people don't really have like yard or garage sales or things like that, but they do put like a little box at the end of their driveway that's like, take this. And then, that's how they get, and it's always empty by the end of the day. People really,
Hmm.
you never know who might find it interesting or need something or whatever the case is. And like you said, schools and scouting groups and, all of those kids love pretty paper.
Hmm. Yeah, and I'm really bad because being like a local artist, people will be like, "Oh, I got all this like acrylic paint, or I got all this. Can you use it? Can you use it?" And I tend to take it because it's like, well, I don't want it to get thrown away. And then I'll like challenge myself to, okay, can I make a free class for kids at the library with this stuff? And I'll try to, somehow package it up in a way that I can create value with this stuff that's just been discarded. I think that's kind of a fun challenge, and I'm sure that's a challenge that teachers at school. Well, you're a teacher, aren't you?
I am, yeah.
Do you? Well, I guess you probably don't work with art supplies. You're a Spanish teacher, right, or an English
No,
teacher?
I kind of did different things. So when I was in
Yeah.
Canada, I was a French teacher. And then now that I'm in Germany, they don't really need the French teachers. So I do math and English. But
Hmm.
yeah, I do because I work in a Montessori school. So I do like they're called
Oh,
ateliers,
nice.
and they're like little creative times, and every teacher puts one on for like a half an hour, multiple times a week. And that was one thing too, where I'm like, I don't use a lot of sprays. I brought the sprays. The kids had a blast. We took old books that were sitting in
Oh,
the attic, that nobody's ever going to read. We sprayed them down, made kind of junk journal type things. They put their little pictures in it, and so much fun. They just had a blast. And even creating things like pop up cards, waterfall cards, anything like that, they just have so much fun. Yeah, I really enjoy
oh,
doing card making
wonderful.
with them. Yeah.
Oh, that's so fun. Yeah. So I guess no matter what you're teaching, you probably could integrate some arts and crafts, especially if you're working with younger children to kind of get them more engaged with the topic that you're studying.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, what else do you have going on? We all know about your beautiful YouTube videos, and I will link you to your YouTube channel. Do you have any? I know you do classes and summits. Do you have any summits coming up that you'd like to share?
Yeah, in January, I have the first one I'm ever hosting on my own. It's a Create with Your Card Making Stash Summit. So perfect for what we were talking about
Nice.
today. So it's going to be all about, it's going to go into like fundamentals of card making. So back when I did the challenge I mentioned earlier, we did something like how do you choose a focus for your card, choosing colors, choosing basing off a card sketch, things that just universally apply for everyone who has some card making supplies. And
Mhm.
it's going to be, I think it's going to be really, really great. And there's going to be community sessions and tons of great classes that are all about, the things that we might struggle with, picking colors. Where do I put what on a
Mhm.
card? That kind of thing. So that's coming up. And yeah, Christmas time, it's always kind of slows down towards the end of the year and then picks up
Mhm.
again in next year. So that'll be coming up in January. And then we'll see what else happens.
Well, that sounds like a perfect way to end the podcast because I'm sure a lot of people watching this have a stash of card making supplies. They're wanting to get more use out of it. Maybe they watched your video and they were in the comments feeling overwhelmed about all the new stuff. So that's a great excuse. No more excuses. You can go watch her summit videos in January and figure out how to use your stash. And until then, she actually has tons of videos on her
Yes.
channel on how you can bust the stash, get the supplies used, and the great thing about stamping and die cutting is that you don't have to worry about using up the stamps because you're going to have them again. It's not like you use that stamp and then you can never use it again, like a precious scrap of ribbon or piece of paper. It's like you can keep using it over and over again, and
Yeah.
come up with all kinds of new ways to use your products. Well, Justine, thank you so much for being on the podcast today. I really appreciate your candor and your insights in the card making industry. And I'll make sure to have all your links in the video description so everyone can find you when they want to know more.
Well, thank you so much. And thank you for everything you do in the art industry. You're fabulous. And yeah, thanks for having me.
Oh, thank you so much. And thank you, folks, for watching at home. If you have any questions or comments, you can go ahead and leave them in the comments section below. You can find everything we mentioned in the show notes. And until next time, happy crafting. Bye.
Bye.